I'm here with Alanzq. You've just made it into the top 16. How does it feel to be dominating in another Riot card game?
I wouldn't say dominating, I think I'm doing just alright, but I had now today first match out of years that I actually felt shaky. I had like, my hand wasn't steady. I didn't have that since last time Worlds Finals, pretty much at Runeterra. And I'm gonna tell you, it feels amazing having that feeling back.
Bro, that is excellent. I love that. That's what I want to hear, Alan. So how has the run been going overall? I know you're on Kai'Sa. How's the deck been humming?
I mean, there were no believers in my version, but it's been proving and proving back and back, running undefeated in skirmish back here, yesterday being undefeated again, today having 2-1 both games, losing one game to the Kai'Sa, losing one game, small games to the E, but just being able barely to pull through. Those were very tough games.
All right, Alan. Well, I don't want to keep up too much of your time. I want you to focus on your top 8 match. But thank you so much for coming and talking to us, and good luck in the rest. We'll send it back to the desk.
Top 16 underway, going in. Alanzq, who we just highlighted, playing Kai'Sa, of course, against the Mirror in KGO. And had the pleasure, Aaron, while, with Frank, that we already did watch a Kai'Sa Mirror, and the intricacies that go in this back and forth really are difficult to execute. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, I really do think the best player will end up the victor of this match.
Yeah, I mean, the Kai'Sa mirrors are really skill-intensive. There's a lot of decisions on a turn-to-turn basis. That's part of the power of Kai'Sa. The deck is really flexible. There are some rooms in the deck building where you can potentially try and get an edge. Some people really think cards like Time Warp are really strong in the mirror. Some people think they're not good at all, and they play 0 copies. Depending on where these players are, they could both have completely different philosophies.
Yeah, and as Frank has been telling us all day today, these are open deck lists. Both of these players know the full information, and you talked about the Time Warps. We got to witness George G play a double Time Warp, 2 turns, took 3 turns in a row for the win, and so we'll have to see if both of these Kai'Sa players really do value doing that. Battlefields of choice here are double Reavers Row for game 1, and I think that's going to create some crazy dynamics, I think.
Yeah, doubles Reavers Row is a type of game that feels so different than normal Riftbound. A lot of the time in matchups, especially with the Kai'Sa deck, units like Darius and Thousand Toe Watcher are really good at going in and removing your opponent's units. Here, though, they just kick them out. The battle for units at the base becomes a lot more important. Things like Falling Star and a Cathian Rain, more valuable than ever.
Absolutely. Early turn 2 plays, or turn 1 plays, of course, with our 2 drops, Poro versus Watchful Sentry. And I think that's the other point, is that it's not so much, I think, about that dynamic of moving the units like you so pointed out, but when I don't see a Dreaming Tree this early on, at least in the beginning of this match, it means I think the cards we are going to be drawing are purely because the cards themselves say draw 1. So does it almost feel like the player that plays more cards that draw will find more answers quickly to then take advantage of this game?
There is some value to that. Really interesting action here. This Watchful Sentry running into a Poro, maybe trying to either have a cleave or bluff a cleave, get this Poro out. Interesting choice from KGO of, do I think you have it? I will say that this is a matchup where, since it's double Reavers Row, a lot of the game is about, can I get ahead and stay ahead on those points? Card draw matters, and finding the correct answers at the right time matters, but definitely less important than a constant board presence and pressure on your opponent.
Speaking of board presence, probably one of the best turn 2s we could have from KGO, right? With the 2 drop, then followed up by the 2 costing Noxus Hopeful now with the Legion ability. And Alan, of course, has some more units of their own, and it's just double Watchful Sentry. So talk about card advantage, right? Drawing and replacing.
Yeah, this is really going to put what I just said to the test. We have KGO putting more stats into play. Noxus Hopeful, really big for its cost. And Alan just having all these 1 might units. Really going to be a situation of, okay, I can capitalize and get some cards. Hopefully that's good for me. I will say, in a game with Reavers Row, you just saw it there, the Watchful Sentry got taken away. A lot of its strength normally is that ability to conquer, give you a point, and though it gets removed, you get a card back. But that's just not quite the same in a double Reavers Row game.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what we're going to do with these Watchful Sentries, when I can only imagine, as we now see this Kai'Sa Survivor getting accelerated from KGO, going into this Reavers Row, going to get the Conquer Draw effect. What are these 1 might units really going to be able to do, unless they're being supported by, some of the spells that, Kai'Sa is able to play?
Yeah, there's an interesting option for Alan here, where you can potentially just send all of your Watchful Sentries into this Poro. It means you won't be able to run away with more than 1 of them from the Reavers Row, but do you even really care? They're kind of here to score some points and die, and Alan is going second and is behind on this points race, so that type of trade is exactly what he's going to be needing to make here in the early turns.
Do you think going first in this mirror match is so strongly important when it comes to actually closing out the match as a whole.
Going first is important, of course, but there is decisions you can make during deck building. Things like Time Warp are really strong and allow you to break serve, but if you have those in your opening hand, especially while going second, they can lead to really clunky draws. You're really much more interested in having a lot of those cheap plays, Hextech Rays, Void Seekers, maybe a Darius to break through a board and attack their stuff. So that in that deck building element is where the play draw gets pushed even farther.
Absolutely. I love how we're going to see a lot of these units stick around for quite some time.
So in this turn, you saw the Watchful Sentry go back into the Reaver's Row, and KGO once again pulled out the Pouty Poro. In the previous turn, Alan made that play, potentially saying, hey, I have a cleave. And KGO, once again, believes it. Alan is really posturing, hey, I have this cleave, this is something I'm going to be using. And he's doing it again here, moving this Watchful Sentry into the Kaisa. However, it looks like KGO said, okay, maybe as a Stupefy here in case of the cleave.
And it's funny, right? Because that same exact posture that ended up and presented, we then did a similar tactic on the other Reaver's Row, but KGO said, no, I'll keep my Kaisa here. And then we did see that cleave come through to go over, and so we have to have the retreat come through for KGO to keep the Kaisa alive and channel this Arun while we do so.
Yeah, these Watchful Sentries, maybe only one might, still scored points into a 2 and a 4 this turn.
I did eat my words. You're 100% right. Kaisa Survivor coming in unaccelerated, of course, just getting some extra units onto the table. Passing back to KGO, and we're now hitting the key 8 energy or runes available to us so that things like accelerated Watchfuls, Thousand Tail Watchers are available and on the play now. But when you're staring across all these 1 might units, not really so much to do there.
Yeah, Thousand Tail Watcher, you know, good for breaking big boards. This is not a game about big boards. Reaver's Row kind of says that's just not what we're doing here, and KGO still ahead on this points race, kind of gets to dictate the flow of how good something like that actually is.
This is where it gets tough for sure. Do you think it's as important to go to 5 now, maintain that lead that you have on the points, while also still, you know, presenting all of these difficult situations on whether or not you use a Reaper's Row or start trading some resources from Alan? I mean, we do have 2 readied runes. We do have cards available to us to help us out.
I mean, getting the points in the Reaver's Row games are pretty free. The only things you have to worry about are potential things like Void Seekers now being able to remove your units because they're at the battlefield, but any combat, you always get that option to run away. So taking the points are pretty free. KGO mostly just thinking there, do I need to play and accelerate this Kaisa? Is it worth it compared to just going in with one of my other units I already have in play to get this extra card? Now, less runes up, something like this Hextech Ray, potentially removing the Kaisa, not letting a card draw happen, makes it where maybe KGO doesn't feel as good about this play or putting these things in here compared to just running in with something that is less valuable.
Yeah. Our Cleave of Our Own, though, going to help out and give the Assault 3. Stupefy in response.
Alan just cycling that Stupefy. It doesn't impact the combat, I don't think. Oh, in response, yes, so it's going to die from the Hextech Ray, the Cleave action. Gets to respond, kill it. That's a pretty big blowout for Alan. That's the type of things you really need to break the serve. Not stopping the point, but definitely getting a lot of energy value. KGO spending 5 for the Kaisa, 1 for the Cleave, and Alan getting to get rid of that for just the Stupefy and the Hextech Ray.
I've never seen so many 1 might units take these kind of trades because of those masterful decisions that you just described. That I kind of was in awe, and I'm glad you explained it because it was very, very clutch, and the idea of already having Dale 3. But as we pass back, we did again get that point for KGO going to 5, and now I think it is up to Alan in a prime spot for him to really come back here and tie up those points.
Yeah, I really want to go back to that previous combat. KGO had let the Hextech Ray resolve. It's one of those things where when you are attacking into a unit right there, you have that opportunity to play your Cleave first. You could have chosen to make your unit large enough where it wouldn't have been removed.
Yep.
But you have to preempt knowing your opponent's going to have this Hextech Ray and this Stupefy, and that's one of the really tough decision calls you have to make in these Kaisa years.
Yeah. Action timing versus reaction timing, like when that Stupefy came out. It's why the game is so intricate and fun, in my opinion. It's this kind of high-level gameplay that we're talking about, slinging spells that we know so well. Moving things in, of course, going to be able to contest and get that point for Alan. We did end up losing, of course, one of those Watchful Sentries, as now a Falling Star going to be coming in here to completely remove the units off of KGO's board, but having to pay that deflect cost, of course.
Yeah, Kai'Sa already used having to spend all the runes in the Falling Star, but letting these Watchful Sentries go in and score points. Alan early on saying, I could let you kill my Watchful Sentry and draw a card, or I can run it away with the Reaver's Row, saying, I think these sentries will be worth more than just a card later, and he's really proving that out now.
And we're in another situation where Thousand Tail Watcher to me doesn't look like the best line when it comes to like accelerating it and getting onto the board. We are now really losing access to the units that we had available. Now they're all gone. But Darius, I think, is a good way to get on there for a little bit cheaper. Just requires you to play a second card. Raven Bloom, another unit, of course. So 7 might on this Darius. Going to be able to contest one of these battlefields at least.
Yeah, Darius here, definitely much better than the Watcher. Going to take a whole turn to do that. Darius at least lets you play the another unit, so you're able to contest both battlefields next turn. KGO going up to that number 6, really important. That Darius, if Alan goes in, just gets to go back to the base, gets to probably go in as a 7 again, likely taking another battlefield. So Alan's really looking to have more of a solid removal answer for this Darius to make sure KGO can't get that win next turn, which still may be hard if KGO is holding something like that Thousand Tail Watcher, making it where Alan can't really hold the battlefields in a really great way.
Pass back, hold to 0.6 for Alan as we now move in with both of our units, the contesting for 5 might versus 5 might.
KGO gets to decide here, do I think I'm going to win on my next turn? If I think I'm going to win, then I want to break this Darius back because it's going to be a 7 and your units are always only going to be a 5 and I get a +2 that is worth a lot in this big numbers fight we're about to have with all these spells.
Yeah, and yeah, Alanzq being only at 7 means like it's impossible for him to win this exact turn unless something crazy were to happen. Not being at the threshold to play something like a Time Warp that we've talked about, can't take the extra turn to just kind of steal the win, but instead just a Pouty Poro to reinforce the other Reaver's Row with that Watchful Sentry, passing back to KGO. This could be the game, but a lot of readied runes on the side for Alan.
Yeah, I mean, this turn is it. Alan is at 7. Has both battlefields, is threatening to hold to win. If both are removed, then that probably means KGO went in and scored both and is winning instead. I would be shocked to see another turn of this game after this one.
5 energy for a second Darius Trifarian. 1 card as played on the count right now. And then before, it looks like probably the next card that would be played would be some sort of spell from our hand, which would then allow this Darius to gain, both of these Darius to gain. As the cleave now being as my choice to give this assault, it will gain the extra 3. We've seen this all the time. It's for that 10 might swing that a Darius is allowed to do. But now with this other Darius, we're allowed to swing in with it as well. And no answer from Alan means game 1 goes to KGO.
Yeah, I mean, there was a really important turn there where Alan was able to kind of claw back from going second and being behind by getting a huge energy advantage by using just a couple 1-cost tricks against a 4 and a 5. Not enough to come back, though.
Absolute calculated gameplay from both of these players. KGO, though, being able to get the win there. As now our battlefields are Arena's Greatest from Alanzq on going first, going play, and then we have KGO for the Candlelit Sanctum.
Arena's Greatest, always the play first battlefield. Never will you see this going second in any of these players' plans. Really emphasizing that, yeah, sometimes the Kai'Sa deck does just get to be an aggressive deck. You can run in and score points, and that extra point from the Greatest puts a ton of pressure on the opponent in a game where they're already starting on the back foot.
No play on, or no, because we're just on this showdown still, but moving in with the Pouty Poro, and we are going to pay this early deflect cost, but like we saw a little bit earlier, it does impose that deflect cost onto the spell, so Kai'Sa is allowed to help out with it as well, but we still got to use 1.
Yeah, the Hex Tech right there, paying 1, that's a huge decision for KGO. That's going to have a massive impact on the next multiple turns of the game. Down 1 rune, now I can't play 2 things sometimes. Maybe I can't play 3 things later. Those decisions, really hard to make, but values Alan not getting that point, especially because, again, that Arena's Greatest put an extra point on the table and is adding extra pressure to KGO.
Was answered by the retreat, and then because we were so early on in Alan's turn, just plays the Poro once again and keeps 1 up. But like you said, denying the point, and that's what matters when you're going first.
KGO not playing the Kai'Sa Survivor here, even though they have 4 runes. pretty loudly saying, I have a trick. With the Bounty Poro, though, Alan's like, yeah, sure, deflect, do whatever you're going to do. If you want to Void Seeker this, I'm down for that.
I've seen so many Kaiser survivors come in on like just the 4 runes, and you play it obviously unaccelerated because you can't afford it, and then you pass back to somebody else and they falling stars it, and it feels like you lose control very quickly because all you spent on your turn was playing the Kaiser survivor, and for some of these Kaiser lists, that's the only one they're typically playing.
So this sequence was very interesting. Alan went in, KGO said, no, I'm actually not going to remove that, which means KGO has these 4 runes ready and may not get another window to play any cards this turn. I wonder if this 4 energy is just going to kind of get wasted, even with the potential of playing a Kaisa.
And that seems to be exactly what's going to happen. No chain started at all because we just played a unit and passed for Alan. Whole turn cycle of doing nothing is really rough.
Yeah, that's really interesting from Alan's side here. That Kaisa is face up. Knows KGO could play it and chose not to do anything to this Pouty Poro. So you gotta be thinking, what can my opponent be holding? It must be something that makes them really value the protection of this Kaisa, maybe a low unit hand, a lot of spells, a lot of removal, and maybe we'll see some of that here. I could imagine, yeah, a Falling Star on this board. Pretty good thing to be playing, getting both units, even if you have to pay the deflect for that Pouty Poro.
Yeah, one of them more expensive, right? You know, because of that deflect cost, but it does get all of the units off of the table, and maybe now we see those 4 runes. We wasted them, or wasted our time not doing anything before, but of course we can play a Lecturing Yordle, get it some, refund itself, and now we at least have the unit lead when going in.
Yeah, Yordle, a nice unit here if you're kind of low on threats, is like, replaces itself. You're not too worried about it dying. It's pretty small, but it still does threaten to take those points.
Instantly answered by an accelerated Kaisa survivor from Alanzq, and here we see what we saw him really have success with yesterday, this Candlelit Sanctum, which this one's not even his, being used with the On-Conquer draw, being able to take a look at these top 2 cards and decide where you want to put them.
Yeah, 1 on top, 1 on bottom, gets that one from the Kaisa immediately. Probably a pretty good card if you're willing to take it at this point. You have a lot of card flow. You're really looking only for specific things, either removal spells to not lose the tempo you have ahead of the game, or some type of big finisher.
So at the current state, catching up a little bit, we played a Watchful Sentry, we passed, we kept 2 up for Alan, but we have now gained that point lead that we were going to otherwise have typically from going first anyway. And I think a lot of it came down to is because we felt like we took that whole turn off from KGO. So it's like we spent some time, denied some points. That was the time for us to re-solidify ourselves. But then it feels like once again we're kind of in a normal game state of what normally looks like when you go second.
Yeah, I mean, KGO is doing an okay job of keeping the board clear and catching up. Void Seeker making Alan do the retreat on that Kaisa, but that is still another accelerate unit in Alan's hand. Going to be able to put pressure on both these battlefields again, and still had another 1 mana play to try and remove this Lecturing Yordle, really pushing KGO back off the board again. You don't get to have units. I have accelerate units. I'm going to keep scoring. Pressure, pressure, pressure.
Yeah, and full rune usage, right? Because now then we also had a Hextech Ray to answer the Yordle going for the Conquer, forcing a retreat out of KGO, and now just has to play a 2-drop. Can't afford the Lecturing Yordle anymore because you had to pay the 1 on the retreat.
Yeah, and you can look at this game. Alan going first, of course, has a rune advantage, but also KGO did kill that Poro early. Paid that deflect cost. You can see it in the rune counts here. KGO only with 7. Alan over here with, looks like 11 runes. The retreat adding more to that. Really gets to play his cards in the way he wants every single turn. And it really gets to dictate things like this Candlelit Sanctum. More expensive cards, usually pretty strong and more powerful here. A lot of times early you're pushing those away, or if you spend a lot of your runes, Alan gets to choose to keep those.
He likes them. They must be good. They're going to help close out this game, hopefully for Alan, as we are quickly approaching more points for Alan. Going to be going to 5 once this accelerated Kaisa goes through, because with no readied runes on the side of KGO, there's no contest.
Yeah, a situation where one of those time warps or any fancy spell here really would shut the game really, really quickly. But also, Alan just a pretty full hand and a lot of options. KGO here potentially needing something like an Acathian Rain to really clear a large board and be able to catch up. Thousand-Tailed Watcher on this turn, potentially pretty good if Alan doesn't have a lot of actions or reactions to fight back against that, killing both these units.
Pouty Poro coming back, keeping 4 up once again. Always posturing that we have some sort of answers, as that is the bread and butter for these Kaisa lists.
Yeah, even if you don't have these tricks, there's so much value in just holding up this energy. There's so many different little ways of removing things. You have Hextech Ray, Void Seeker, Retreat, Stupefy, Smokescreen, and your opponent has to respect each of them in slightly different ways. So just saying, okay, I have 4 up, I can have so many combinations of those. Your choice of which ones to play around can put a ton of squeeze on someone that is already behind and maybe really doesn't have the luxury of playing around much of any of them.
I don't envy KGO's position. I think the Watchful or Thousand-Tailed Watcher is not a bad play, but with only the support of this Ravenbloom student, it still leaves yourself a little vulnerable at essentially all of your runes again.
Yeah, if you're having to spend 8 and do it accelerated, you're only leaving 1 up. Possibly you have a Hextech Ray, Retreat, or a Stupefy. But even then, that Ravenbloom student's gonna be pretty fragile if Alan has another one of those removal spells, Hextech Ray or a Void Seeker, which means your Thousand-Tailed Watcher maybe can't clear both battlefields. You're really likely to get the Kaisa, but the Watchful Sentry maybe just doesn't even get removed.
Seems like we are going to commit to at least playing it without the decision for the Accelerate per se, as it's going to instead be the Thousand-Tailed Watcher plus the Falling Stars, and because it gets these units very, very low in might, and it looks like we're even going to target the Pouty Poro in the base, paying that extra deflect cost again.
Yeah, this is another avenue of why Thousand-Tailed Watcher is so powerful. Falling Star, also one of the stars of the Kaisa deck, but those two together really let you just remove any 2 units pretty much anywhere a lot of the time. And this is a situation where for KGO to kind of catch up, needs to really hope Alan can't take a battlefield next turn. So getting to take that thing out of the base and remove the Kaisa freely leaves Alan with no units and says, hey, do you have a Darius or something?
Yeah. And there is that Hextech Ray. That was one of the cards we had access to for Alan, which is going to get rid of that Ravenbloom student. So again, although we removed, you know, the 2 more threatening pieces, it means that there's going to be a hold point here for Alan, and it means all he really needs is 1 accelerated unit to get the most amount of points he could have gotten in this next turn, and he still has so much to be able to play with. Or like you said, things like a Time Warp, but instead a Cathian Rain is going to be the answer to get rid of this Thousand-Tailed Watcher.
All right, so Alan is saying, I don't have anything that can score a point this turn. I have to do this. I'm going to remove your thing. Probably still feeling like pretty good shape. The point differential here, massive. KGO needs a lot of things to go right. Being able to potentially remove this Watchful Sentry and have Alan just be on all spells. No ways to score for a while. But potentially next turn, a single Accelerate unit is not the same level of power. Because this was the turn where if you could do that and get both, you're really threatening a lot, where once you get to 7, but you're only scoring that 1 battlefield a turn, it's just not able to close the game.
In 6, though. 6-1. One of the largest non-Aurora matchup point discrepancies I've seen most of the tournament. But, you know, KGO being up a game, not exactly like the highest level of pressure, but you definitely still want to make sure that your opponent can actually close out the game, because like you said, the way that cards that Alan is playing, a Cathian Rain, not taking the second point, instead going to 7 to be in a scarier position while also holding both battlefields, it does tell a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I can believe Alan was more interested in holding something like a Darius, because that is a powerful play from your hand in the turn where you're trying to go for 7. Thousand-Tailed Watcher, just trading for a Cathian Rain, though, often you can get another unit or something out of that Rain, and kind of just accepting the middle bar. So definitely is telling. That Kaisa getting removed by the Void Seeker, really bad for KGO. Now definitely has to use real removal on Watchful Sentries, and it looks like does not have any of those.
That play alone enough to give the game to Alanzq as we're moving on to Game 3. And the battlefields are going to be even more interesting. As we already know, Alan plays this Candlelit Sanctum, so another one coming in here. And like you said, now it is KGO's turn to bring out his Arena's Greatest going first.
Yeah, just a little swap their positions. Let's move around the board, and both players starting off with a card that I think was kind of the star of the last game, Pouty Poro, again, really impacting KGA's runes last game. I'm very curious to see if this is the type of game where Alan feels forced into Hextech Raying in a similar way, just because KGO is now going first with that Arena's Greatest.
And I think Alan learned based off the results of that last game, maybe that's not the decision that we do right off the get-go in the beginning, but that means an early Candlelit Sanctum use here from KGO could go a long way for even more advantage.
Yeah, we're seeing a couple just normal units off the top there, this Pouty Poro and this Noxus Hopeful. If KGO has the option to play Kai'Sa next turn plus Noxus Hopeful, that's a pretty good turn. 2 4-might units, not removed by Falling Star easy. But if there's other 2-cost plays that you can play, maybe not interested in taking these and looking for some more impactful cards. A decision whether this game is about me playing to the board or me wanting the most powerful and the most card advantage possible.
I love that idea. Being able to set up that Noxus Hopeful Kai'Sa Survivor turn, but current posture is keeping both of them. It means that we do value having that Pouty Poro as well at some point in the next 2 turns.
Possibly KGO has some way to draw an extra card, play both of them. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe is planning to do something like Stupefy given the opportunity in this turn. Just, Stupefy my Poro, draw them both, so I can play like 3 2s in the next turn. That would be really impactful on the board really quickly. Depends, of course, on what Alan is going to do here.
Yeah, but we had another situation where KGO didn't actually play anything with his runes going on that turn 2, and all Alan does is play Kai'Sa Survivor, unaccelerated, no chain at all is created, so and then he passes once again. Although you give the hold point for the Pouty Poro over, again, 1 whole turn where we didn't do anything.
Yeah, but this one's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Alan also didn't get something out of it. He was concerned about a potential removal spell, did not move in with this Pouty Poro, didn't go in and offer the trade, or go into the Arena's Greatest to try and score a point. Some of that could be fear of retribution in a accelerate unit like that Kai'Sa Survivor, but some of it could also just be, I really do want to make you waste those runes. That could be a situation where actually, at the end of the day, both players are pretty happy about how it went, and one of them may be wrong about the situation.
We'll clear the books. We'll handshake across the table. We'll be like, I'm okay with that as long as you're okay with it. And then there is a Stupefy. So you had the correct read on the idea of just like that could have been something we had to just get value out of our runes, but that opportunity wasn't presented to us for KGO. And, even the way that we looked and how we looked at our deck for the Candlelit Sanctum, it looks like the Noxus Hopeful will get played, but not alongside that Kai'Sa Survivor yet, really holding on to it in this game.
Yeah, seeing that Stupefy on the Kai'Sa here, I am curious if we're going to see a Falling Star trying to move both of Alan's units. Maybe not. Maybe it was just spending the Stupefy to get the Legion going on the Hopeful here so they can hold up, once again, those 3 runes, threaten that Void Seeker. But if you do have the Falling Star here and remove both of those things in the base, puts a lot of pressure on Alan to have a pretty quick return to the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see if he has it. I mean, I think that play and line sounds incredibly strong, but really wondering where to put this Noxus Hopeful, even going to support this Candlelit Sanctum.
I've seen that hand motion before. You play your card, and you just kind of shake it around. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I guess here's good enough. Sometimes that's just what it is. The Kai'Sa deck, you could have so many things to play around. Putting 6 might into the Candlelit Sanctum, a pretty good number for Darius to fight into. I imagine KGO is considering what he would do in retribution of a Darius coming down. Only 3 runes up, potentially some retreats, maybe a Void Seeker to make a trade. But I imagine Darius looking really tempting to Alan here if he has access to one, especially plus a Cleave or Stupefy.
I'll use the word bait. If the bait is that KGO wants Alan to do the Darius play, if it's a Cleave, I think it's pretty scary unless we take the trade. But I think right off the bat we're going to see, obviously, the Darius will come in, but it's only going to be 7 might, which then means the 3 leftover runes that KGO really has an opportunity here for him to support this.
Yeah, I mean, the Kai'Sa deck is not that good at protecting its units outside of retreat. Anything that would make this combat not just end up with Alan taking the board is something like a Void Seeker. You have to remove it and still trade off all your units. And I'm not sure KGO is super happy about this situation. Is thinking pretty hard. I would like to believe during the last turn while playing this Noxus Hopeful, this was a situation that was definitely going through their head, and you would kind of have a plan here. Alan is all exhausted. All the runes are gone. No energy available. So KGO gets full knowledge of how this turn in combat are going to play out, and seems like it's a pretty difficult decision.
Are you a big, while our players decide, are you a big posture reader of, like, I asked you this earlier, I think, but when I look at the way that Alan's EQ is sitting, and they're kind of laughing a little bit at each other while KGO is in the tank right now, and like you said, the hand waving of the card, Alan looks as cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, and all your runes are exhausted. What can I do? I don't know what you could have with this Darius. I think you got Void Seeker. That's fine. It's all in your hands now, KGO. You show me what's up. And sometimes this is just what you got to do. If you're sitting there stressing while your opponent's tanking about a tough decision, it kind of just can get in your own head. So the best thing to do is just be like, all right, I will see what happens, and then I will start thinking again.
Looks like it's just, again, like you said, going to be that direct damage coming through with the Hextech Ray, where although we lose both of the units here for KGO, we are at least going to get that Darius off of the board. But this presents a prime opportunity for Alanzq to come in and match up the score and a bonus draw from the Kai'Sa.
Yeah, that Hextech Ray leaving up 2 energy, but that's not enough to play a Void Seeker and threaten the Kai'Sa. Potentially could have had another Ray and a Stupefy, but doesn't. Alan's got to be feeling really good after that turn. A board that seemed pretty favorable for KGO turned around really, really quickly. And again, KGO wasted a little bit of energy and got 3 for 1 by that Darius.
Yeah, 3 for 1. I don't want to hear that when I'm playing games.
Interesting note here, KGO only has 1 Mind Rune. Even if there is a Thousand Tail Watcher wanting to be played, it is not actually an option on this table.
Yeah. Darius, though, is a good rebuttal, at least when you just got rid of your opponent's Darius. And then the Pouty Poro follow-up here that, remember, we ended up keeping on top of our deck that we saw earlier to draw at this kind of particular moment, means this Darius is going to have the 7 might to hopefully contest against the Survivor. And, of course, Alanzq is completely tapped out. So a trade out for that unit getting over, and KGO will go back up in to 4 points for the score lead.
Yeah, keeping the Pouty Poro with the intention of, oh, I need something cheap to play with this Darius I've been holding totally makes sense. Something that is worth having now. This Pouty Poro gets to pressure the Candlelit Sanctum, potentially trade in with the Poro there. Alan really wanting to score and get rid of this Darius, but it is less crucial for him this turn. At 4 points, if you're able to take the Arena's Greatest, you're only going up to 5, that odd number, much less threatening than an even number. So I could see a turn here where if we can't remove the Darius, it's very possible we just back our stuff up, play some stuff to the board, and really set up for a big future play, especially if the idea is, maybe we're able to take both battlefields, go to 6, and set up a Time Warp.
More Mind Runes, at least of the use for Alan here, but a Void Seeker coming in first, targeting, dealing the 4 damage to the Darius, which means this Watchful Sentry looks really good into it, at least for trading with it, and then getting also the bonus draw from the Sentry. And it's going to have to go through not having something like a retreat at all this game, it looks like, for KGO to support and keep those kind of units alive. Yeah,
and as I was saying about the points, Alan's at 4, doesn't really need to go to 5, is actually pretty happy on this board just to clear the Darius, even if it means he didn't take the Arena's Greatest.
Yeah. Just, finalizing more units, getting them in position for later for a potential, hold here, or if the contest doesn't come through for the Pouty Poro, of just like Alan really being in that position where he just is allowed to have a whole nother turn here of setup, as long as he scores 1 or 2 more points than things like that Time Warp play on the table, like you said. But being able to set up here and then also set up on the next turn, I think is a prime position to be in when it feels like KGO is constantly trying to play catch up.
Alan chose to leave this Pouty Poro in the Candlelit Sanctum, possibly thinking like, hey, if you want to move your Pouty Poro in and we trade, that's fine. But it's one of those things that is now allowing KGO to potentially use an Accelerate unit as a removal spell. Normally, one of the things you do in matchups like this is keep your stuff safe in the base, because Kai'Sa is so good at conquering and removing units at the battlefield with their Accelerate units like Darius, Thousand Tail Watcher, Kai'Sa. And a lot of times you can disallow them that opportunity. Alan saying, okay, if you want to accelerate into my Pouty Poro, maybe I have a retreat, maybe I have a Stupefy, whatever. I think I'm happy with you playing units, and it looks like KGO's maybe going to go for that line here by playing this Kai'Sa.
Finally coming in from the champion unit zone, as you said, going to go for the Conquer draw.
Taking the other battlefield, says the Pouty Poro. No, you can leave that. Potentially afraid of the Hextech Ray coming out of Alan. Really needs this card off Kai'Sa maybe and doesn't want this trade to occur.
But that Poro trade coming in here now for KGO, you pointed it out earlier, and actually going to try and take it over with a cleave play on top of it.
If Alan does have that Hextech Ray, could offer the trade by Hextech Raying the other Pouty Poro. However, that would cost 2 runes because the Kai'Sa is already exhausted, and the Deflect.
Getting to 6 points this turn, though, for KGO. I'm all of a sudden kind of rooting for them a little bit more, but the Candlelit Sanctum, I'm going to take a look at the cards. And they are the breath coming out of KGO really going like, okay, well, these are Raven Bloom plus Void Seeker. Maybe not what we're looking for necessarily right now in this point in the game.
Void Seeker potentially pretty good on a big turn if you need to just remove the units at the battlefields and then move in. However, Ravenbloom Student, keeping that's kind of an idea of like, oh, I think the game's going to go a while. I need to be able just to play non-accelerated units into my base. Getting rid of both of them, saying this is just not what the game's about anymore.
Big turn here coming up for Alan to see how he solidifies his place in this game. As it is game 3, both of these players make it or break it here in top 16. Player goes home, one of them moves on.
Yeah, Alan does have enough rooms to do something like the Time Warp, but is unable to take both battlefields without playing more spells. Can only play the Time Warp if that's the route. So, no just victory on the table here, but a Thousand-Tailed Watcher, always good at clearing these battlefields. One of the most important cards in a matchup like this one.
Going to be accelerated here, which unless that means a double mind channel next turn means, you know, things like the Time Warp are off the table. But here it is, very easily trading into this Kaisa, knocked down to 1 might because of the Thousand-Tailed Watcher. And it even means the Pouty Poro is going to be easy to trade into as well.
Yeah, KGO here could have a combination of Hextech Ray and Smokescreen to remove the Thousand-Tailed Watcher, but even if that is true, there are 2 more units at the base ready to come in and fight both the Kaisa and the Pouty Poro.
Yeah, I'm going to take that. Alan going up then to 5 points, and now this Pouty Poro versus other Pouty Poro, but one of them's got a little bit more might.
KGO having to make a big decision here on, do I do something here? If it's a removal spell or a Stupefy, I'm going to have to pay Deflect, go down on runes, currently on 8 runes themselves, which is kind of what you need to play a Thousand-Tailed Watcher plus something else, or something like that Time Warp, and a situation where every single rune matters as you are trying to get over this finish line to get to those 8 points, and Alan's about to threaten a win by having both of these battlefields.
Luckily, we do still have the Daughter of the Void legend ability, which will help even with the deflect cost, as long as it is one of those kind of tricks that's not just a retreat for your own Pouty Poro, because that wouldn't stop Alan from taking the point.
Right, a Stupefy here would work. That doesn't have a natural power cost, but Smokescreen, Void Seeker, Hextech Ray, all of those do and will cost that extra rune, even through the Daughter of the Void.
Looks like it's going to be a Void Seeker, which is going to help at least give another extra card draw for KGO.
Yeah, this doesn't actually stop Alan from taking the Candlelit Sanctum. This Ravenbloom student gets to go in immediately. To me, if I'm Alan, I'm thinking, okay, KGO is saying that they need to draw cards. They need something else that's not in their hand, so they're forced to play this Void Seeker, because that Pouty Poro being there, maybe not that relevant to the game overall. This is one of those situations when your opponent's playing Candlelit Sanctum, the game's really close.
Yeah.
And they're tanking, and there's 2. And if they ever end up saying, yeah, I'll keep both on top, you're just like, oh no, what is happening? But Alan, putting some real thought into this one, a really tough position. It's, what do I think is going to matter next turn? If I'm going to get a next turn, very likely on this board. Hard to break through both the Thousand-Tailed Watcher and the Ravenbloom student for Kaisa with 9 runes, but is this a game that's going to continue past this next turn cycle? I would say it's pretty unlikely, and Alan is trying to figure that out himself.
I'm over here, while we're thinking about the Candlelit, obviously, as we pass back, I'm trying to think, like, what does KGO do here? And aside from using some, like, mass removal, a Cathian Rain type ability, but again, that doesn't re-solidify your pace back onto the board, which then means it's a prime opportunity for Alan to just do, like, accelerated units, you know, finding a way back into the game, or just starting to play more units.
Yeah, this is a situation, some Kaisa list will play cards like Legion Rearguard because they're very cheap units that accelerate and can steal points. KGO has the Cathian Rain clearing the board. Alan not having something like Legion Rearguard in his deck means he can't really just take both battlefields from a hand with only 10 runes. That requires 2 Darius. Pretty unlikely. Is possible, though. But most of the Accelerate units are pretty expensive and pretty clunky.
Yeah, I was counting, you know, how many runes we have. Is double Darius on the table? Like, is that a real thing that we could do? Even then, the 7 might would have traded with the Watcher. So it's so hard. At least getting a Ravenbloom student down for KGO, though, means that, like, he's first to start putting units back onto the board. But for Alan, as we're just kind of exchanging this playing units now, at least this one draws a card for a new option.
Yeah, so Alan here not able to take the battlefields,
Yeah.
not going to be able to really hold them, is going to have to threaten a lot of spell action. KGO has a Raven Bloom. That's going to get to go into 1. If you assume there's a second Accelerate unit, that's threatening the win. And even if Alan doesn't have anything, has to pretend that he does.
Yeah, I mean, and it's why we see cards even like this Falling Star being played just for a single removal, because you just cannot allow your opponent to have those units still to then threaten the double conquer for the win, because it's just not one of these things that these decks do. It's all about setup and then going for it. Double conquer plays are pretty difficult for these decks that don't have units out.
I think in KGO's hand, I saw a flash of a Time Warp. Not the type of card you actually want at this stage. There was a situation potentially earlier we could have set it up, but never was able to get to those 10 runes and really maximize its potential. And it looks like it's going to be true in this game as well. Already at 6 points, maybe only needs 1 conquer and a hold if is able to get a unit in play and then get to their next turn. But Alan also is threatening that win. So having a card like Time Warp in your hand that takes time and takes resources, when it could be something else, another piece of interaction, another cheap unit you could get into a battlefield, it's really showing the pain of having that card here.
This being the second card for this turn, but I guess not valuing. Or is it the third card? Did I miscount?
It was the third card after the Falling Star.
Right.
Alan not wanting to go in, realizes going to 7, not really mattering. It makes your Darius better. But what Alan did do, exhaust out, no runes available. If you have some way to win, great. I don't think you do. That seems really unlikely from 9 runes.
We're just playing a bunch of cards that draw cards, but currently Alan has game on board if these battlefields are contested. Holding 3 up is enough to stop one of these conquers, but I think it comes down to one sort of accelerated unit of any capacity here on Alan's side.
Yeah, not a lot needed for Alan to win here. It matters. Is there an answer to this Lecturing Yordle? Does KGO have a Void Seeker or a Hextech Ray? There is one. If there wasn't, the game would end right there, because nothing's removing this Darius, which is these mana runes. But Alan, you know, a full grip of cards. Tons of possibilities, and even if doesn't succeed this turn, probably pretty good at setting up for the future.
There it is, an accelerated Watcher. Probably coming in here with only 2 runes up for KGO. I can only imagine.
That's got to be game. I don't think there's anything KGO can do with just 2 energy into a 7 and a 5 might unit. This is well played from Alan, coming back from a game where on the draw against the Arena's greatest, KGO getting that early lead, but Alan finding the way to come back here, and there is the handshake.
There it is, the best of 3 series, the Kai'Sa mirror, almost all the way down for the time for both of them, but Alanzq gonna be moving on for top 8 on Kai'Sa.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video and let us know what you think about that one. Kurwa mać!